Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody. A Monday edition of Birds 365. I know I got a different looking setup today, a little different location. A new Monday morning to you, a month out, Johnny Mac, as we just talked about pre-show. A month out from Eagles training camp beginning, a month out from that first practice. How you doing on this Monday morning, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer. Some big things this week. Jason Kelsey's back down to shore for his charity event for the Eagles Autism Foundation, Sea City this week. Devontae Smith's celebrity softball game is this upcoming Saturday in Allentown for people up in that neck of the woods. And Milton Williams, Zach McPherson having their 7-on-7 annual football classic, high school football classic in South Jersey. That will be Friday, I believe. So some of the guys trickling back in. They'll be back out again quickly for the 4th of July holiday. But, you'll see some Eagles around this week, around the Delaware Valley, so to speak.
So some good stuff planned for the Eagles players. They got their off-season stuff. They got some of their, as you mentioned, Devontae softball games. So pretty good stuff. I want to welcome everybody in this morning. Madness, Eduardo, Ryan, Suplex, Slagger, CZ, anybody I missed, Twiz, the Jigga, Crowley, Tyler Bra as well. We appreciate all you guys being here this morning. Thanks for sticking with us all through the off-season. June 24th, everybody. We are moving quick, Johnny Mac. The time moves quick when you have your eye on it. It really does. And we are now just under maybe 30 days away till that July 23rd report date. So getting close, and we are ready to rock. Johnny Mac, what are you thinking about right now as we're a month out from training camp? Any players on your mind? Any position groups on your mind? Anything right now you're thinking? I know we have a month to stew on it, but anything on your top of mind for you as you think about what you're going to be looking for going down there a month from now?
Yeah, I've been pretty. I think the story of the season is how Jalen Hurts is going to mesh with Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier to a lesser extent, and I think he's got a prior relationship with Doug. But I want to see how this offense works. There's a clip going around from Tom Brady. It's not new. It's pretty new, but I think it was posted maybe a week or so ago, where it's talking about basically boiling down quarterback play in the modern NFL into about 5 minutes, really. And, he mentioned 4 specific quarterbacks, himself, Peyton Manning. Those are the 2 I always say. Those are the templates for me for the modern quarterback. And I'll explain why in a second. He added Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers is key because that's Nick Sirianni's guy. Nick Sirianni loves Phillip Rivers. And he loves Phillip Rivers because he can handle things at the line of scrimmage. And that's what Tom was kind of pointing out. It's like, we're not going to make a great throw all the time. We're not going to make a great play all the time. How we judged ourselves, and he's talking about Tom and Peyton and Drew and Phillip, is did we get this team into the right play on a right circumstance? Did we run a poor play with the opportunity to check? That's how they judge themselves. Not touchdowns, not yards, not passer rating, not championships. Did I get my team play to play in the right position to potentially succeed? And that really, there's nobody to talk about it better than Tom Brady. That really boils it down to where you want to be if you can get there. Easier said than done. There's very few people that can do that seamlessly in the NFL, and that's what sets those guys apart. But that's where you should be striving for. So I've said, to me, it's no issue about struggling in the spring. We're not even going to talk about that once training camp begins. We're certainly not going to talk about the offensive struggles in the spring when the season starts. And I think people have to understand what practice is. Practice isn't a game. You're not trying to win practice. You're not trying to win a series of plays. You're not trying to win an individual play. You're trying to get better. Sometimes that's doing some things maybe you do poorly to try to get better at them. And if that's what's going on,
Yeah.
I have no problem whatsoever. That's just good coaching. Now, if Kellen Moore's trying to, and Dallas Goddard had one of his charity things out in Drexel Hill last week, and he had mentioned, the quick game again. If it's trying to pound the square peg in the round hole, then you got an issue. And that to me is going to be the story of the entire season. What that relationship develops into.
Yeah, and there was another report that came out. By the way, I did see that clip before I move on. I did see that clip from Tom Brady. Just tremendous stuff when you listen to him break down and you realize how much base level analysis goes on. It's such a deeper position. There's so much more that goes on into it. And when you hear a guy like Tom Brady, tell you how he judges himself, it's obviously something worth listening to. And we'll get back into that a little bit. But back to your point about Hurts and Kellen and the meshing of the offense. There was another report that came out this week from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN that Hurts has been more vocal. I don't know if this is a kind of a, reaction to some of the latest news, but he's been vocal and taking ownership. And that was the report from Jeremy Fowler. The quote was, "I'm told the Eagles have spent a lot of time this offseason taking the old offense, Nick Sirianni's system last year that Jalen Hurts is used to, mixing it with Kellen Moore's principles, put it all in a pot with some gumbo and seeing what works and what Jalen Hurts is comfortable with. I'm told Hurts has done a good job of this offseason of being vocal and taking ownership of the plays he likes and the plays that he doesn't." I think that's a positive thing. I want Jalen to own this offense. I want him to be the executor. I want him to be the main guy in there. I know Kellen's obviously a big part of it, but I think it all comes down to Hurts. And to me, that's a positive thing. I don't know if there's much validity to it, but just back to your point about how important that storyline is, I think it's make or break for the Eagles this year, that whole situation.
Yeah, and hopefully Jeremy's description turns out to be correct because that's what you want. Now, Jalen himself called it 95% new. That's the question I actually asked him. How vocal are you at this point in sort of, imparting what you like on this offense? And he kind of took it in that other direction about learning it, 95% new. And we'll see. I mean, certainly there's going to be stuff you're familiar with because, it's the NFL. Everybody runs bubble screens. Everybody runs certain things. They've been a good quarterback sneak team for years. They're certainly going to continue running the quarterback sneak. Simple things like that. They're a staple of every offense, inside zone, outside zone. Jeff Stoutland's here. That's what they're going to do in the running game. So a lot of it's going to be similar. And so that 95% thing is probably more related to terminology, and that's always been a pet peeve. I don't understand coaches who can't, maybe be a little bit more open to, there's tremendous turnover in the NFL, but there's still a bunch of guys who are going to be there. So my point is, if you're going into a new situation with like Kellen Moore is with a quarterback that's entrenched, that's been here, and you have similar things, and he's got to learn it. Why does the quarterback have to learn? Isn't it easier for one to change than 25 or, however many offensive players? But while I say that, I'm not picking on Kellen Moore because everybody does that. And it's always been one of those things that have been not made a lot of sense to me. Like if you're changing, you got a bunch of new players, you're bringing in a completely new scheme, you have to change certain things, no question about it, on both sides of the football. But when things are similar, doesn't make sense to me, never has.
Yeah, makes your explanation of that makes sense to me for sure. John, going back to that Brady clip, how confident are you in Hurts to do some of those things that Brady talked about? I mean, I feel like so much of what he talked about is things that are harder to quantify, especially as a fan who's watching the game on TV every week, or even if you're going down there and you're watching Jalen Hurts and, you might have a gripe with the passing yards or whatever, just the way he plays the game. But specifically speaking about what Tom said, reading defenses and those type of things, and at the line of scrimmage, managing the game, stuff like intangibles like that Brady talked about. How much of that have you seen from Hurts, at least up to this point? You've been covering him since he's been an NFL player. And how confident are you in him to make a stride and a step forward in that moving forward?
Well, I'm confident in him taking a stride. Can he get to that level? I don't know. Not many people can. I would say I would lean against that, and I'm talking about, again, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning level, which is, that's a high bar to put it, understated. So it depends what you're saying, but yeah, I expect him to get better every year. One of the things, and that's why I can't stand it, everybody who knows the show and they're sick of hearing it, you don't judge play calls. I don't care if you know it or not. You don't. You have no idea. And that's what makes it, and Tom said that as well, the frustrating part. It's not basketball, it's not baseball, it's not these sports that are pretty, straightforward. There's a lot of nebulous aspects to the position that you're never going to know. And the NFL doesn't help because they hold on to these secrets like it's, the CIA, and it's not that important. And they could help educate better, but teams are never going to do that because of the competitive advantage factor. And, I get the most obvious example, because AJ stepped up and took responsibility, was the Seattle play. Again, before that, people are saying, what are they doing? They're not giving Jalen options, blah, blah, blah. Wasn't the case. He's the one who checked at the line of scrimmage, he and AJ. And they had that ability, and they were given that leash, and it didn't work, and they made a mistake.
But aren't you okay with that mistake? Because I think this is one of those things that was blown up a lot. Like, I don't have a problem if my quarterback wants to go a different route. Now, I hope he does it in a way that is conducive to keeping a good relationship and a good environment on the team. But I don't have a problem with Hurts and AJ saying, hey, we like this play better at the line of scrimmage right here. Let's go to it. If it doesn't work, all right, it doesn't work. I mean, but not every play is going to work, no matter what situation.
Well, that's why Tom was saying, well, hey, there's two maybe you make a bad throw. Maybe you make the right call, but you make a bad throw.
Right.
Making the right decision does not guarantee success. It just, it increases your odds for success. In that case, it was the wrong decision because, they were in a too high shell, and you saw as, I think it was Julian Love was able to come over pretty quickly and ascertain what was going on. Ironically, Seattle won the game on the same play, but Drew Lock made the right decision because he read the coverage correctly, and he had a one-on-one, and they ended up winning the game. So from that standpoint, if that were Tom Brady making that throw, he that's, as he judges himself, as he said, he would say he did a bad job. That's where you're doing a bad job, when you're making the wrong decision and not getting your team into the proper play, which will give you the best chance of success. So,
and is that mostly on reading defenses?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, there could be so many things. I mean, a lot of people, does he want to get the ball to his biggest playmaker in a big spot? That could be, all that stuff factors into it. There's so many things that come into it. It's not just about, all right, he made a wrong, he didn't see what was happening on the field correctly. There could be a bunch of things that come into it. And I wish, Jalen was a little bit more honest about those types of things, but he's hardly the only one that keeps that stuff under wraps.
Yeah, I'm not going to knock him for that. But the reading defense thing is interesting because I've always thought that it takes time. Like, even for Tom Brady, a guy who was the best at it, he didn't come into the league dicing up defenses, reading them well. He got better and better and better at it over the year. And so does every quarterback. It's a hard it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard, there's a lot to grasp. It's always changing. There's so many different looks, different things, different possibilities on any given play. But a lot of people, a lot of fans point to, they think Jalen Hurts, and I don't know, in some instances, I think they're right, but not every instance. Fans are critical of Jalen Hurts' ability to read a defense. And, you look at some of the all 22s, and there was Dallas Goedert open on one side, or whoever it might have been on any given play. And he missed them. I know there's progression reading and all those things.
Yeah, that drives me nuts too. I'm glad
it drives me nuts too. But I just to the point about reading defenses, do you think that's something that, Jalen can get down? Have you seen enough of him to be like, okay, he's going to get it? It's going to take a little time. He's still a young dude, remember. This isn't like a 30.
He's only 25. It's always a process. He's only 25 years old. It's always a process. He's gotten consistently better. There's no reason to assume he's not going to get better and better and better as he goes on in his career. Learn from certain things. Don't repeat them. How high can he go? That remains to be seen, But I think, the blitz is probably the biggest thing because it looked so bad last year. And then the nonsense, and that's what I call it, that, Nick Sirianni's got no hot routes in his offense. I mean, think about that on a base level and how stupid that is. I mean, the guy's been an NFL coach for how long? The guy's coached the position. The guy won 29 of 32 games at one stretch, and he doesn't have a hot route, which you can go down to your local high school and see hot routes.
Yeah. So where does that come though, John? Because look, I respect your opinion on football as much as anybody, and I see exactly what you're saying, and it makes sense to me. But when I listened to our post-game show last year,
and by the way, he coached Phillip Rivers as the offensive coordinator. Is pretty damn good at figuring out what was going on.
Right, so why was it not evident? Like I said, I listened to you, and it makes sense. I listened to Seth Joyner on the post-game show constantly, constantly talk about hot routes and the lack thereof of them in the Eagles offense. Why? What happened last year that they didn't have it? I know, I'm with you. It's not that Nick Sirianni doesn't know what they are, but where was the deficiency in having them? Where was it created?
Well, the blame is being put on the wrong people. Hot routes are always the responsibility of the quarterbacks and the receivers being on the same page. It's built into the offense. If you see something, and that's where Tom's saying, right. And he mentioned, I forget the word, he would have the one-word calls to communicate it to everybody. Could be Zander, could be Johnny Mack, could be Jeff Kerr. And that communicates everything to everybody. Hot routes are always on the quarterback and the receiver being on the same page. If they see a slot blitz, ball better come out.
Right.
That's built into the offense, whether people want to believe that or not. I don't care if you hate Nick Sirianni, feel free. If you hate Brian Johnson, if you think they're the dumbest people in the world. But I'm telling you, you're wrong. If you think Brian played the damn position at a high level at Utah, he knows what a hot route is. You think sitting on your couch and wherever, you think you know a hot route better than Brian Johnson? I mean,
no, I don't.
A lot of people do. So, if the quarterback isn't comfortable, if the receivers aren't on the same page, that's where you sort of back it. And I would consider, because I don't like bubble screens, but that's what the Eagles did. Let's be honest. So they defaulted to, all right, we don't have a good look. We got the numbers outside. Let's try to make a play with a bubble screen. They got to get off that. They got to get better. And that involves, if you want to criticize the coaching, that involves getting the quarterback prepared to where he's comfortable to go in other directions. And that's a big part of what Kellen Moore's job is this season, to put it mildly.
Yep, lot to look forward to as we prepare for training camp. Just a month away. Johnny Mac put it nicely in this segment. A lot to look for in the offense. A lot to see how Jalen and Kellen Moore mesh, and even Nick Sirianni. What's his role, and how does the whole thing mesh together? So we'll see how it all plays out. Coming up next, we'll have Jeff Kerr join the show as we do every Monday. So Jeff Kerr coming up next. To see him in the green room. Let's get to our first commercial break. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. A lot of good viewers, a lot of good listeners already in here this morning on this Monday, June 24th. Hot summer days right now, everybody. Hope you're staying cool out there and you got the AC on if you have it. So stay tuned, everybody. Make sure you like the show. We'll be right back with Jeff Kerr.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Birds 365, joined now by Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports. Make sure you guys follow Jeff on Twitter at Jeff Kerr CBS. Jeff, how you doing, man?
Enjoying my vacation, boys.
Nice.
Yeah, Jeff's on vacation, but he's still a trooper. He's still joining us on Birds 365 for his normal Monday spot, so we appreciate that. Enjoying your downtime, Jeff. Are you starting to get scared? It's a month away. First practice. Month away.
To quote our buddy Martin Frank, it was nice not thinking about football for a week. We only got 4 more weeks of this.
Non-football things. What are your non-football? We know bowling. Any other non-football things going on for Jeff Kerr this week?
I build Legos, so that's what I've been doing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. That's interesting.
What Lego set you working on, Jeff?
I'm doing the Marvel, the Avengers, the Infinity War stuff. I'm finishing up Groot, and I'm having problems getting the head together. So it gets frustrating. If you ever want to see me at my best, when you're almost done finishing something and like a piece falls off.
All right. That's out
I've
of my
never done a Lego
wheelhouse.
set, but I have watched somebody do a Lego set, and they are intricate, so I could see why you're struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I get them done, but it's one of those, you just get kind of sick. So that's what I do in the morning. Then I usually do my workouts and stuff like that. But yeah, I'll be bowling a lot this week. I probably will be going to Cooperstown at some point. Just trying to detox, I guess is the right word.
Football detox. Yeah. My neighbors are on vacation, so I have to do a bunch of extra chores because my wife volunteered me for that. It took me 5 minutes to figure out their childproof fence lock. So I don't think I'm going to handle Lego building that well, but, yeah, good for you. Get away from it, but now I'm dragging you back in. Um, you jumped in there at the end of Zander and I talking about. I think the biggest thing about this season, Jeff, is Jalen Hurts, Kellen Moore, and how that develops. I think that's the whole thing. And I hate to boil it down because I hate people who just say, "Oh, Nick Foles beat Tom Brady or Tom Brady beat so it's always quarterback versus quarterback." But for this team to get where they want to go, this offense has to evolve and do the things that people want it to do. And we've got conflicting signals in the spring. Was Jalen frustrated? Was he just trying to get better by doing stuff he doesn't necessarily do as well? And then you scale it back to what you do well when the games start. Where are you on this whole transition?
I think Jalen is working on things, but when you work on things again, I kind of look at it to, and again, we're mentioning bowling here, but I've changed my approach, I've changed my form, I've changed my release hundreds and hundreds of times. It's frustrating when you got to change, and Jalen is doing that right now, and I just keep looking at it as I think we got him, and it's amazing how he still couldn't answer if there's a connect between him and Nick Sirianni. I know I keep harping on that, but Jalen is learning how to get rid of the ball quick. He's learning how to throw more passes in the middle of the field. He did that the second fewest of any quarterback last year. Kenny Pickett was the first. I think this is all new to him. And because it's all new to Jalen Hurts, it's getting a little frustrating because he's probably not seeing the results right away. He's probably thinking, man, I'm an all-pro quarterback. I've been in the Pro Bowl the last 2 years. I've had success in this league. And right now, it's just a hard time. It may not be a hard time in August or September, but right now, I'm sure he's frustrated with everything.
Jeff, a report came out from Jeremy Fowler that he's really starting to take ownership of plays he likes. And, we'll see how it all plays out. I almost feel like it's a reactionary report to all the things.
Yeah, who sent that to him? The Eagles?
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm not sure, what came out about it, but Jeremy Fowler did report it, and it's something I've said. I told John in the open. I want Hurts to do that. I want him to own this offense. I want him to be, the lead guy in there. How comfortable are you he's going to do that? There's a lot going on in this offense. There's a lot of different voices, a lot of different opinions. How confident are you in Hurts to take that next step and to take that ownership of the offense?
I mean, if I go based on his track record, he should be able to do it. That's what my expectation is of Jalen Hurts. Everybody puts him on this pedestal of a top 5 quarterback. Well, top 5 quarterbacks can handle any offense. That's just my opinion. And if Jalen doesn't like it, then the Eagles shouldn't have lost 6 or 7 games last year, and he shouldn't have turned the football over 21 times. But I digress.
Speaking of handling offense, I assume you saw the Tom Brady clip who boiled down NFL quarterback play to about 5 minutes, and I would argue he boiled it down even further to about less than a minute when he said, we judge ourselves, and he was talking about him and Peyton Manning, and he mentioned Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers, and I said Phillip's key because Nick Sirianni loves Phillip Rivers. Boils it down to your job is to get the offense into the right play on a particular play again and again and again, as many times as possible. Is there anything else?
Get the ball to playmakers. That's pretty much my whole, when I watch the whole Tom Brady thing, I'm like, oh, this is why this guy's the GOAT. And I know you went on the stat thing. I tend to disagree with him a little bit. There are some that are out of context, but they're not worried about their stats probably like we are worried about their stats. I'll just say that.
Oh, no. Yeah. No. Yeah, we kind of said that. It's not, there's a lot of, and he said, we judge ourselves on basically, did we get our team into the best play for this position? And because you're going to make mistakes, you're not always going to make the right throw. You're not always going to be perfect in a certain situation. But if you keep making those good decisions, the odds for success will increase. And it's hard to argue with the success that those four specifically had. And I think it's unfair to say anybody's going to get to that level, but that's what I think every coach should be striving for. You can't get there immediately, certainly, but you should be striving for it. I remember Chip Kelly, and that's one of my biggest criticism of Chip Kelly. If you tapped Chip on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Chip, I can give you Tom Brady," I think he would have turned it down. That's how nutty he was about his particular scheme and what he wanted done. He didn't want anybody thinking for themselves. This happens, do this, blah, blah, blah. Tempo, boom, boom, boom. I think that's bad coaching. I think you should want, if you don't have the ego to get out of the way of Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, you shouldn't be coaching. That's how I feel like.
Well, that's the anti-Vic Fangio, right? Vic Fangio said, "What makes good defense? Good players."
Yeah. Well, he's right. I think everybody knows. If you ask Chip that, he'd say the same thing. But I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of people who believe in their scheme so much that, they want those. And there's a thought process, and Vic kind of said it with Jalen Carter. Doesn't matter what scheme he's in, he's going to be good. And that's what Jason Kelsey said about Fletcher Cox. It's one of two players he played with that would be successful no matter the scheme, the surrounding cast, yada, yada, yada. There are those guys, but they're few and far between. I think people get too in love with their scheme. That would be my biggest criticism of coaches. If I were an owner, Jeff, I would never hire a guy over a scheme. In other words, I'm not hiring a scheme. I'm not hiring a guy because of his scheme if I were an owner. Am I incorrect?
No, I would agree. Would you count Cliff Kingsbury in that mix, though?
Yeah, I wouldn't hire Cliff.
Yeah. And I think there are a couple guys that, remember Adam Gase had a scheme?
Oh, God, yeah. Did you see Le'Veon Bell going? He can't.
Oh, yeah, he went off on him. Some of these guys can't let it go. I feel like as much as I don't like Adam Gase, I think Le'Veon Bell kind of needs to.
He can't let it go, man.
Yeah, just look in the mirror and say, dude, you took a year off from football. What did you think was going to happen? Look at Deshaun Watson right now. What do you think is happening? You need to be playing. And you purposely took a year off for money, and you got it, and you were the worst running back in football.
Yeah. Well, I agree. But to the point of Adam, and by the way, the Eagles fans should be, they had a lot of interest in Adam Gase.
Why? I never understood it.
Well, he was the hot candidate at the time. They weren't the only. Everybody, there's a lot of groupthink in the NFL. I think the Eagles are better than most, but they fall into the same category. There's always the hot candidate.
Well, they wanted him too, and I'm just thinking to myself, why don't you just hire Peyton Manning?
Yeah, well, I mean, we just saw it with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron keeps poor, Nathaniel Hackett is, he gets a head coaching job because he coached Aaron Rodgers, and he might have been the worst. I always say, who was the worst head coach you've ever seen? For years, it was Josh McDaniels, his first time in Denver. For me, he was just an abject disaster. Adam
it's funny
Gase
how
was
it's
in that.
Denver people.
Yeah, Adam Gase was in that category. And then Nathaniel Hackett may have lapped them all. And then Rodgers gets him a job in New York. And then he gets hurt. And they're screwed again.
I think Urban Meyer's up there too.
Urban's up there, yeah.
Urban, Bobby Petrino was a bad one.
Bobby was bad. Yeah. For some reason, I kind of go past the college coaches because I'm like, well, they should have known. So I hold the guys who've been in the NFL to a little bit of a higher standard.
That's fair.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'd be very careful about hiring a college coach. Not that it can't succeed, but I think there's going to be some growing pains.
You know, it's funny because someone like Bill O'Brien had an NFL background, went to college.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. Yeah, there's always you got to pay attention, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and like Bill O'Brien even admitted, like his biggest regret as being in the NFL was taking that GM job. He said that if not, I might still be an NFL head coach somewhere, and I don't think I disagree with him on that.
Yeah, he wasn't bad. He wasn't terrible.
And Texans won.
Yeah. And he might get a second chance. There's a lot of guys. Dan Quinn took a long time.
I'm actually happy for him. He has that head coaching job at Boston College. I'm curious to see what he does the second time as a college head coach. 10 years with the full no scholarship restrictions, anything like that. See if he can rebuild that program.
Well, BC, we're going off on a tangent. What do you think of the Packers hiring Jeff Hafley as the defensive?
That was something. That just tells me I'd rather coach in the NFL instead of having to recruit players already on my team.
Well, yeah, he's a longtime NFL guy, so that's sort of like he was Tampa Bay, Cleveland, San Fran before he went back to college. He was at Ohio State and then the head coach at BC. So maybe it's sort of like an O'Brien thing on the defensive side. But boy, that one came out. Now they had to move on from Joe Barry, but that one came out of left field.
They've had a couple defensive hires that came out of left field or last. Mike Pettin was always an interesting one when they got him too.
Yeah, people forget. I mean, locally, Mike's a big deal because of his high school days, and his dad probably is an even bigger deal. But he's where Doylestown, I think he's from. And
Central Bucks West. They were at the Pettins.
Yeah, but that was his dad. I think he went to North Penn for local people. And then all of a sudden he's in Baltimore as an NFL assistant from North Penn High School, and slowly rose up the ranks from there. But now he's like, I don't know what these titles mean, but he's like the assistant head coach for Kevin O'Connell. I don't know how much that means. But yeah, he was the coordinator in Green Bay for, I don't know, 3-4 years. He was okay.
Yeah, defense wasn't terrible. I don't think it was the problem with the Packers, but the Packers like to blame everybody but Aaron Rodgers over there. So
no, but he had been the head coach in Cleveland, so he had been a big deal before Green Bay tabbed him, and now he's becoming one of those NFC North guys. So he just goes from Green Bay to Chicago to Minnesota. So next year he'll be in Detroit. I guess.
What's funny, John? I think if you asked like NFL fans, give me 5 Cleveland head coaches that aren't Marty Schottenheimer or Paul Brown. I bet they couldn't do it.
Well, they had, if you want to go back to the original, the reboot of the Cleveland Browns franchise. That's why, like Kevin Stefanski, another local guy, by the way, his dad used to be
Ed Stefanski.
Yeah, the GM of the Sixers, for those who remember basketball. Ed was a big deal. So he had some inroads. He was an intern. His first job was an intern with the Eagles, and he slowly worked his way up from there. So they rebooted, obviously, after moving to Baltimore. For fans that don't know, long time. The original Cleveland Browns moved to Baltimore, became the Ravens, but they always knew they'd be back, I guess, the NFL, so they kept the history and the name in Cleveland.
John, when I was 8, 9 years old, I went down the rabbit's hole with that. I'm like, well, how can they be the Cleveland Browns if they're not the Cleveland Browns? The Cleveland Browns are in Baltimore now. And I remember my dad used to say, well, they're coming back. I'm like, okay, they're coming back, but why did they get their history? I never understood and the NBA did this too with the Hornets. When the Hornets, they moved to New Orleans, but they were the New Orleans Hornets, and they changed the name, and then the Hornets, the Charlotte Bobcats asked for the Hornets name back. Now the Charlotte Hornets have their history again. I just don't. It's too confusing.
Well, it is because there's no consistency. Like, when Houston moved to Tennessee, for those who don't know,
they keep their history.
Yeah, they didn't. That's the point. The Oilers remain the Titans. The history of the Titans is the history of the Oilers. So, yeah, there's no consistency, but it just breaks down to, at the time they knew they were coming back to Cleveland. At the time, as funny as it sounds, they didn't know they were coming back to Houston, because Houston's one of the, it's a bigger city than Cleveland. Why wouldn't you come back? I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense. I agree with you.
And it's weird how the Adams family is so, they hate Houston that much. They won't even let them sniff the Oilers' name or colors.
Yeah, and they should have kept the Oilers' name in Houston, but yeah, you can't do it because it was originally, how dumb is that name? Tennessee Oilers.
I love those Tennessee Oilers jerseys, by the way. They had the Tennessee logo on the Eddie George. But it's funny, they changed their name, they changed their logo, and they go to the Super Bowl right away.
Yeah, well, yeah, but here's the thing. Houston Oilers is perfect. There are certain team names that are perfect for the city. Oil in Texas, Oilers.
Tennessee Oilers made no sense.
No sense. So, and I don't want to pick on her, and I'm not even going to mention her name, but during the NBA playoffs, it was, fun fact, they did this sort of social media clip. Fun fact, she was from Inglewood. I'll just say that. She said, the Lakers originally played in Inglewood. Fun fact. And I'm like, there are no lakes, sister, in Los Angeles. They originally played in Minneapolis.
Did you see that social media debate, by the way?
Well, there is no debate.
No, but Boston Celtics fans are going on a tangent. The Lakers only have 13 titles. They don't have 17. They want more. That doesn't count.
Right.
Yes, it does. It's the same
But
franchise.
there's certain things. Minneapolis Lakers was perfect.
Yep.
Now people think it's perfect now because of alliteration, and there are no lakes in Los Angeles. So
I haven't seen one.
About you anyway. Philadelphia 76ers, perfect name for the city.
And they changed the name when they moved from Syracuse.
Yeah, Syracuse Nationals. If they move the 76ers to, I don't know, Topeka, it wouldn't make sense if they called them the Topeka 76ers.
I don't think
we're on an off-season tangent, Jeff. We're on an off-season tangent.
Do you think Sixers fans would care if they moved that team to Topeka?
I would hope.
I think they would care. Yeah.
Sixers fans love their team. I have no problem with Sixers fans loving their team. I just think their organization is a disaster.
They're in a big arena battle right now, by the way.
Yeah, they don't want to be a second-class citizen. I don't blame them. That one I don't blame them for, because basketball is a much more important sport in the national lexicon than the NHL, and they're a second-class citizen in their own arena. So I don't have a problem with that. But the way they do things basketball-wise, I have a big problem with, and that's the bigger part of it.
Yeah,
that's the bigger part of it.
There's a lot of things with that organization that, people say they don't have a plan. I was told they have a plan. It's just they have a bunch of plans. And
well, they always have a plan. It's just always a shitty plan. And then we'll bring it back to the Eagles. Is it a good plan? Is it a shitty plan? Beard off. Howie Roseman, by the way, happy birthday. Howie's birthday was yesterday. It's
how old is
interesting.
Howie now?
49.
He's not even 50 yet.
Well, he was
Kind
the
of bizarre.
youngest GM in the league when he got the job. And he's still, relatively young, as you mentioned. And now he's so entrenched. It's amazing. That's one of the greatest stories. I mean, when he got the job, he wasn't a football guy. Nobody respected him, blah, blah, blah. Now he's like the grand poobah of the GMs. Everybody's like Howie, 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 to the point that everybody's sick of Howie getting all his flowers.
They don't even
Kind
want
of
to trade with
amazing.
Howie.
Well, that's probably good. They should probably hang up the phone. That Adam Peters clip was great for people who saw that. Adam Peters, it was the Cooper DeJean trade, and Howie was trying to put one over on Adam Peters, the rookie GM of Washington, trying to sneak in a lesser pick. And Adam Peters, what do you call him? A pain in the ass, I
Pain in
think?
the ass, yeah.
Yeah.
But Adam Peters probably learned from John Lynch. When Howie Roseman calls you, just make sure you understand every word he's saying.
Yeah. Pain in the ass is how Adam described it. And we'll see how that works out. Cooper DeJean. But the plan, I guess the biggest outlier is running back and spending at that position a little bit less at defensive line, defensive fronts than usual, depth-wise. Anything else different you've seen from Howie as a reaction to maybe the collapse?
Yeah, I mean, I think they addressed the secondary a lot more, and I think they went back to the old when Joe Banner wanted to reassess the secondary. And look, secondary was really good in 2001. They have the best pass defense in the NFL. They had Bob Taylor, they had Troy Vincent, and they said, we got a pretty good roster here, but let's see if we can continue that. And we'll draft the Lito Shepherd. We'll draft the Sheldon Brown. We'll develop these guys because we have Vincent Taylor locked. I think that's what they're kind of doing with Mitchell and DeJean. It's even though they're going to play more than Shepherd and Brown did in year one, and Michael Lewis, they still know they got Darius Slay around. We'll see about James Bradbury, but they do have young corners that can step in. Kaylee Ringo, Isaiah Rogers. In the secondary, they signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They have Reed Blankenship in there. It's actually a nice situation for their top two draft picks to kind of learn. They don't have to. They can play week one, but that doesn't mean they have to.
John, Jeff or John, I'll ask you as well, because I want to go back to one comment, John, you made that really caught my eye here. You said, if I were a coach, I would never, or if I were an owner, I would never hire a scheme. Now, I know we were talking about offense. Do you apply that same logic to the defense?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't,
Well, what do you think then about the hiring of?
I didn't like the scheme when Jonathan was here and people, think
You're John McGann's biggest defender. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I like Jonathan, but I said pretty consistently, you can ask Jody Mack, I said pretty consistently, I don't like the scheme. And that was, where are we now? 4 years ago, where I thought people were catching up to the scheme. Now, I have heard from some people that follow Vic, and I talked to a lot of people who covered Miami. He has changed a little bit. He has evolved a little bit. So that part of it, I like. He understands, because I heard him talking about it. He understands that a lot of people have copied the scheme and that he doesn't like it, but it is what it is. And you have to be constantly being a step ahead. So I think he's more likely to do some different things, and he already has. From all accounts, instead of quarters coverage used to be the default setting of the scheme. Now he runs more cover 3 or cover 9, as he calls it. So he's already changed a little bit, but the overriding philosophy remains the same. And by the way, Tom Brady talked about that as well. There are so many. When he was talking about Buffalo in that clip, he said what Buffalo would do is not show what defense they were in pre-snap. and then spin out into post-snap coverage that they were going to use. That's what Vic does. That's his whole philosophy. That's why so many quarterbacks and so many head coaches, offensive head coaches, including Nick, have said, you know what? This is the defense that is most difficult to deal with. So this is what I want run. Sean McVay was that way. His guys, LaFleur, O'Connell, they're that way. Bunch of offensive coaches think it's the toughest scheme to deal with. So that's why so many people copied it. But this league, Jeff, when Tony Dungy and it was cover 2, and then everybody copied it, and it became easier to deal with. And Pete Carroll and the Legion of Boom, and everybody copied it, and it became easier to deal with.
Remember when the 46 defense was, everybody copied that?
Yeah, it goes in that cycle. And I thought we hit the tipping point years ago. And I think you saw it, and you've seen it in Green Bay. Joe Barry getting fired because they were a disaster. You've seen it with Ed Donatel getting fired, and he was a disaster. And you saw it last year with Sean Desai. He was a disaster. Is Vic going to be better at it? Of course. But I'm still worried that people have caught up to it.
Yeah.
That's my biggest concern.
It's funny because I respect Vic Fangio and what he's done.
So do I.
I mean, you've been in the league for 40 years. You know what the hell you're doing. But you're right. What's going to be the next trend? And did the trend pass already? Because remember, the old way of beating that defense was, okay, the Falcons' way, of all things. Well, we're just going to run the ball. And teams are like, okay, well, you can have 7 yards to carry. You won't stop us in the end. Well, the thing was, the Falcons were scoring points. Now they were. It was kind of fluky because they thought they could score points with Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder, but they could score points. Now it's okay. Short, quick passes can beat that defense. So now I wonder where things are going to go again. Like, who's going to be the trendy coordinator everybody's going to follow? Will it be Raheem Morris?
I think it's going to be Mike McDonald. I think it already is.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny because everything I've heard in Seattle, just from reports and all the other it seems like, okay, yeah, we lost Pete Carroll, but we got the best head coach of this cycle, and players seem to be really happy with him.
Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out. Well, that's another thing. My rules, if I were an owner, if anybody wants to give me $6 million, feel free. I'll run your team for you. But I wouldn't hire a defensive head coach. I wouldn't. Not that they can't be successful, plenty have, but I just think the odds are not in your favor.
Especially in today's NFL.
Well, that's what I mean.
Remember the Eagles hired a defensive head coach once, and it was good for about a year and a half.
Yeah, not that you can't be good, but my thing is I'd like to get a good offensive coach and then get Mike McDonald as my defensive coordinator. If you can do that, then you're cooking with gas. But it's easier said than done, and you can be successful because and that's what Nick Sirianni's trying to do as a CEO coach. So there's a lot of different ways that you can be successful. But if you're doing it just on the odds, I would have to go with an offensive guy.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, look, Vic Fangio, everybody always wondered for years why he never got a head coaching job, and he got one. So,
yeah.
By the way, John, we've been talking Denver a lot today with Hackett and Gase and everything else. Is that the worst run organization in the league?
Worst run organization. Well, for Washington, obviously, with Daniel Snyder.
Oh, he's gone now.
Yeah, he's gone. So, I mean, I don't think Carolina's doing pretty good.
David Tepper's
kind of and there was so much joy with him coming in because he had so much money. and he has so much money, and he's been a disaster on and off the field.
The
Denver.
Jets are funny too.
Oh, the Jets are a joke.
All they had to do with the Aaron Rodgers thing was just not do what they said, and this wouldn't be a story.
Yeah, well, the Jets have to be on the top of any conversation. And I love Joe Douglas, and I like Nick Sirianni a lot. But yeah, they'd be at the top of the list. Yeah, the Giants are on the top of the list. New York football.
The Giants are awesome. It's
Yeah.
So the Giants did their top plays in franchise history, and I joked last week before I went on vacation. CBS, I'm like, I'll give you 5 right now. They're like, of course they're all Eagles related. I'm like, yeah, Miracle of the Meadowlands, 1, 2, 3, 4. I said, oh, and Bednarik basically killing Frank Gifford. So there's your 5.
Yeah. Well, but by the way, the Giants had a lot of good years when Parcells and Jerry Reese, and they were a great organization for a long stretch. Now they sort of were a disaster when they played at Yankee Stadium and where the Yale Bowl and Shea Stadium. They were
every stadium in New York.
Yeah, they were one of the worst teams, and then they kind of got their feet under them, and they became one of the better organizations in the NFL for probably about 2 decades. And then when they made the decision for move on from Tom Coughlin and Jerry Reese, which maybe it was time, certainly from Tom Coughlin, he was aging, obviously, but boy, they've been a disaster since they broke that duo up. An absolute disaster.
For those who don't know, maybe you heard from your fathers about the 62-10 game between the Giants and the Eagles. What made that game so bad in Philadelphia was the Giants were just as bad as the Eagles in the early 70s. And the Eagles lost 62. In fact, they might have been even worse than the Eagles during that time.
Yeah.
And that was all Giants fans love to mention, that they beat the Eagles 62-10.
Yeah, I think I just saw the Eagles. Boy, I hate these things. Should I bring it up? I guess I'll bring it up, but I want to make sure if I can find it. I think the NFL Network did their Mount Rushmore of Eagles.
I'm curious on this one.
Because I saw WIPs and I laughed out loud. So, but the NFL Network was much better. They put obviously, it's easy. I mean, it really is. It's Bednarik.
Yep.
It's Steve Van Buren.
Yep.
It's Reggie White.
Yep.
And then you can pick the 4th one. They picked Brian Dawkins, which is a good one. But those 3 are no doubt they're slam dunks.
I still don't think people understand how good Steve Van Buren was.
Oh, no. Yeah, definitely.
He was the NFL's all-time leading rusher when he retired. It was by a lot.
Yeah.
Jim Brown just kind of erased every record he had.
Yeah. And Jim was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, no pun. Yeah, he was really good. But it's funny, though, when you look at, the NFL history, you look at Van Buren, you realize no one rushed for, 1,000 yards. No one rushed for 10 touchdowns. And this guy's just running for 1,400 yards, 15 touchdowns, just running over people because we don't have enough film to show it. But I still like when the NFL did their top 100 plays of all time, and everybody made this big argument. What's so great about a 3-yard run in the snow? Well, it was a pretty big deal in 1947. And oh, by the way, that was the only score in the Blizzard, and Steve Van Buren basically was the only guy who could do anything in that game.
Yeah.
I think people by default knock it because what was he? 40s and early 50s? I think it was a different.
Yeah, late 40s. Him and Greasy. If you wanted to tell me Greasy Neal is the greatest Eagles head coach of all time, I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah. I mean, I leave that. I tend, I'm a big history person in general. So I do find it a little bit disappointing when people don't know anything about like Steve Van Buren and they put only modern people on any list like that. That's why they kind of drive me crazy
A
at
lot of
times.
content creators do that. I'm like, when did football start for you? Like 2000?
Yeah, well, exactly. I still remember I saw a Warriors one that didn't have Rick Barry on it, and I'm like, all
How?
right,
Oh,
all right.
by the way, John, you'll enjoy this. So, went down a rabbit hole last week. Because I'm bored, and I went on the NFL Reddit page. You know, there were people that were arguing John Elway wasn't good.
Well,
I'm like,
yes,
and
I
like
believe.
a lot of like people like me, like Elway defenders, they're like, okay, you clearly have not watched John Elway. Well, he really wasn't. Look at his rating. Look at
Look at
this.
his
Look at that.
numbers. Look at
Yeah,
his numbers.
I
Yeah.
was like, oh, so we're going to ignore his rushing. Well, he didn't really win those Super Bowls. I'm like, he threw 300 yards in one of them at 38. I said, oh, by the way, Super Bowl 32 was on last night. John Elway was number 2 all time in passing and passing touchdown, and the top 10 never won a championship. He was the first one to do that.
Yeah, and it's a completely different game, which, football more than anything else too. It's just all the games have changed to unfortunately, I would argue everything's become a math problem and it's really affected the beauty of the major sports, I would say, the
It's crazy,
aesthetic nature. But
John. It's
yeah, I
crazy to
mean,
see how football worked, right? Like, especially with Elway. Remember Dan Reeves would just be conservative for like 3 quarters? And it's like, all right, Elway, go do your thing in the 4th. And
yeah, it was a completely different day. I still remember, talk about numbers. Everybody knows 714 and 755 and baseball for years. I don't even know what Barry's at because it's not as meaningful anymore. But and football, when Joe Montana retired, I still remember to this day, Jeff, 92.3. 92.3 was burned into my memory. That was his passer rating, which was so astonishing at the time. Now it's a bad year.
it's crazy, right? Remember when Steve Young was just having 100 passer ratings and you're just like, what can't this guy do? He can run, he can throw. I mean, and he had weapons across the board. He had Ricky Larsley and Jerry Wright, but those 49ers teams to me were much more aesthetically pleasing with Steve Young than they were with Joe Montana. Joe Montana is one of the greatest quarterbacks ever.
Yeah. But it is what it is. I mean, the game has changed. And it's changed pretty dramatically. And you can argue the same thing about basketball with all the 3-point shooting and baseball with all the now batting average doesn't seem to matter as much.
Yeah, it's OPS now. Which
so-
again I kind of like the OPS stat because it combines the best of both worlds: walking, getting extra base hits, etc.
I don't like it because it's too in the mud. Like baseball used to be. Zander's probably rolling his eyes because we're on so many tangents. I
Good.
apologize.
I'm listening. I'm
He's been
learning.
putting on the mute button a lot too. I've noticed.
But when you talk about baseball and OPS and WAR and things like that, I'm like, you gotta have the casual fans understand what the freak you're talking about. So for years, baseball was America's pastime. For younger people who don't know, it was by far the most popular sport, by far more popular than the NFL. For years, for many years. It no longer is. It's now 3rd on the pecking order, which is astonishing. But
It is gaining momentum though. A lot more people are going to baseball games again.
Yeah, the attendance, but that's because they want to have a nice Sunday afternoon. They're not going to watch it on TV. That's for damn sure. But
Is it getting close to the NBA now, though? I feel like the NBA's falling back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you there, Zander.
Well, their TV contract is bigger, and that's all that matters. The NBA,
right. But baseball's TV contract is a joke.
Well, and now they're on Roku and Apple TV, and nobody can find the games. But beyond that, when you're talking about, if you go back, there's so much romanticism with baseball the old joke, you go to money. How can you not be romantic about baseball? So much spectacular writing about baseball in the old days. Now I see a slash line from some knucklehead down there you're working with, Jeff, and I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm not interested in this bullshit. That's not.
I thought I was the knucklehead you were mentioning.
No, well, you have to do it, but it is awful. I don't care.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, John, because like I try to mix the best of both, but I will argue with people like when people say WRC plus, it's 112. I'm like, what's a good WRC plus? By the way, I'm a baseball savant and I can't tell you that.
Yeah,
No. I'm like, no. Explain it to me like I'm 5. Like they can't do that, so they're not that smart.
Yeah, and the day when war and replaces in the casual fan's mind.
War is a fluke stat. It's a really fluke stat. So Corey Simon of NBC Sports Philly really got into somebody with war the other week because someone said Ricky Weeks was a better player than Ryan Howard in 2008 because of war. And Simon lost it. He goes, did you just not watch these two play? You didn't even have to go like this is where the ultimate eye test. Look at 48 home runs and drove in 145. Yeah, I remember that stat. I don't remember what Ryan Howard's WAR was.
Yeah, I think the best Phillies team of that era, well, probably the two best Phillies teams of that era, didn't win. The
11,
one that lost to the Yankees.
And 9. Yep.
And the one that but specifically because it was the World Series. If you watch that World Series, I think Chase Utley hit like 5 home runs.
Yeah, 5 home runs.
Yeah. So he would, but they were pitching, they were treating Ryan Howard. They were like, all right, Chase Utley's hot. He can do this. They brought it. I forget the left-hander at the time. Boy, I wish I could
from their bullpen.
From the Yankees, yeah.
Yeah, oh God, I gotta rewatch the 09 World Series. But
they just brought him in every time it was post 6th inning, big spot. They just brought him in.
Yeah, because they're saying this guy is not beating us. He beat everybody else in the playoffs, and they said this guy could be us, this guy could be us, this guy could be us. Ryan Howard.
I think it was Tommaso Marte.
It was Tommaso Marte. That's exactly who it was. Because I remember David Robertson was on that 09 team too, and they always took him out when Howard came in.
Yeah, they did everything to stop Ryan Howard. Everything. Their whole plan was this guy, as you said, is not going to beat us. And that's the kind of stuff that you can't import into a stat, no matter how much, even in a statistical game, you can't do it.
I do this argument right now because they DFA'd Johan Rojas last week. And I said, you guys know they're 76-39 when Johan Rojas starts. Well, no, that's this guy. I'm like, okay, but they were only 8 over 500 when he came up. His defense is so valuable. And Rob Thompson tells me this all the time, and he knows I agree with him. You can't measure defense. You can't. You can't use a statistic. You have to go by the play on the field. The Phillies are a much better team when Johan Rojas is in center field and Brandon Marsh is in left field. That was one of the reasons why their starting pitching has been so good this whole season, because those two are manning the fort. And is Rojas having a good defensive year? No, but there are plays where it's not Brandon Marsh's fault. It's not Christian Pache's fault, but you're just like, Johan Rojas probably catches that ball, or Johan Rojas probably does not make that play a double.
All right, we got to bring it back to the Eagles. What are you doing to me?
I'm doing the WIP bid for you.
At Jeff Kerr CBS. Make sure you follow Jeff on X, Twitter. CBS Sports does a tremendous job covering football and baseball, as you just heard. All right, we'll end it with the Eagles and the fact that we're a month away from training camp. If they're going to add to one position, if Howie's going to say, hey, I need something for my 49th birthday, I need one more piece. I like
this.
What position is that going to be?
Get me a wide receiver 3. Just, there aren't that many options, but I think Hunter Renfrow on this team would be kind of nice.
Yeah, he's kind of.
Not
He's
where I was
injured.
going, Jeff.
He's injured a lot though.
Well, I'm not as high on Hunter Renfrow from the standpoint of that's all he can do. Like he can't play outside; he can only play in the slot. Now that's what they need in general, but that also kind of affects because Devontae and AJ can do everything. They can move from X to Z to Plex, and you want them inside on occasion. And when they are on occasion, you want your third receiver to be able to at least be, somewhat of a threat outside. I don't know.
But it's the sixth option on the football team.
That's
it's the
true.
sixth
Well,
option.
we're talking. That's the off season. What do we?
I know, but this is why I can't go wide receiver in this question. I'd have to address something on the defense, even if it's a linebacker that you think is a better chance.
My Doug Peterson story of he's the sixth freaking option.
Yeah.
You should fire me if I'm.
Was that an on the record, off the record section?
It was originally off the record, but then he talked about it later, so I can say it. It was originally off the record. It was one of the greatest things I've ever heard. It was phenomenal.
Here's the thing. I just don't know what the Eagles are going to add a linebacker.
A linebacker?
Yeah, a linebacker. Like, do you think they're going to I don't know. I just don't
I don't think they are going to add a linebacker. I think they should, but
well, we all think they should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think they somewhat believe in Zach Bond. They still believe in Nakobe Dean. Devin White is the second coming of Derek Brooks, evidently.
They really want him to be a thing.
I don't know if they do. But I think the fans do. Or a large portion of them.
Now, if you talk to the fans, Jalen Hurts is better than Joe Burrow. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's some Eagles colored glasses.
We don't want to go down that rabbit hole to close out the segment, do we? The Nick Wright rabbit hole of Jalen Hurts top 15 and all that crap.
Chris Sims gave him top 10 this year, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah,
he has a bad year and he's top 10.
I'll bring it up. You can add this to the column of things I did not want to bring up on the show today, but we'll bring it up anyway. Nick Wright is unsure if Jalen Hurts is a top 15 quarterback. I do think it's a legitimate conversation. Do we know Jalen Hurts is good? Are we certain Jalen Hurts is a top 15 quarterback in the league? There's only 32, so are we certain he's better than the average league starter? That was the point from Nick.
I'm unsure if Nick Wright is a top 15 radio host at Fox.
Well, I'm not going to cast stones at Nick, but I think Jalen Hurts is a top 15 quarterback. I get what I get what he's saying, maybe more than other people do, but I'm not going to entertain that he's correct. But I think he's saying the team is so good, he doesn't throw a lot of yards. Are we sure he's better than?
Tell you what, Zander, there's two arguments right now I really, really hate in sports. And one is, the team's good, so he's good. Or that they play a weak schedule. They are the two that drive me insane. It's like, you play who's on your schedule. Two, I don't care. Joe Montana had Hall of Famers across the board, and we don't question his validity as one of the GOATs.
You gotta go pretty far to get Jalen Hurts out of the top 15. I don't know.
Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback. Let's just be realistic.
Yeah, I got him bottom of the top 10.
Which is fair.
8, 9, somewhere in that range. What are we going? Is Geno Smith better than him?
No.
I don't. How many off the top of my head? Mahomes, Jackson,
Josh Allen,
Joe Burrow, Josh Allen,
Herbert, Jackson, Hurts,
Herbert,
Stroud, Purdy, Stafford. He's got to be in there. I would say if you're going to leave him out of the top 10, it's going to be 10 or 11, maybe like 11. But
I mean, if you want to bend over, you can go Aaron Rodgers coming back because he's Aaron Rodgers, I guess. You can go Dak.
Where do we put Trevor Lawrence in all this?
Matthew Stafford. Well, he makes $55 million, so you can put him in there. CJ Stroud is somebody you can put a Jordan Love. Trevor.
You know what also bothers me? Why is there so much can Jalen Hurts do it again comments from last year, but we don't get this from Jordan Love or CJ Stroud. Jordan Love played good for 8 games. But let's not crown him the next Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers yet.
No, I love Jordan Love, and I said that's going to be a big thing. Does he think he figured it out? I told Zander that last week when we were talking about the Packers. That's, if he thinks he's got everything figured out and he's not trying, and I have no idea what's going on with Jordan Love, but I've seen it happen in the past with guys who, like Carson Wentz and Dante Culpepper, quarterbacks I've covered, who had big seasons and kind of said, you know what, I think I got this figured out. And the minute you start thinking that way, they're gonna expose you.
When was the Culpepper? When did he think he had after 2000?
Yeah, after his big season, one of the best seasons ever, by the way.
Yeah,
For
I'll tell you what, that guy could throw.
I remember the
He could
exact.
throw some bombs.
I remember the exact quote was, "The game has slowed down for me," and I said, "Oh, geez, wait, this
Yeah, it
ain't
really
gonna go."
slowed down for him in Miami.
Yeah. Well, then he suffered a really catastrophic injury. So the Miami stuff, that was a bad decision that cost Nick Saban his NFL career, by the way.
I thought in 04, it was really funny what Jim Johnson would do to him. Like, he just was like, all right, we're going to give you the Michael Vick treatment. We're not even going to blitz you. We're going to have Derek Burgess stand back there, and you're going to think he's rushing you. And then Burgess just kind of stands there, and Culpepper's like, what do I do? What do I do? Like, do I run? Do I not run? Like, that was my favorite thing watching Michael Vick back in the day, when Jim Johnson would just be like, okay, you may beat us once or twice, but he'd have Burgess, or he'd have like, I remember Brandon Whiting was I think Brandon Whiting was always the guy who did it too. And Vic would be like, wait, I can't run? You mean I got to throw the ball? Oh, I'll go to Algie Crumpler. And Algie Crumpler was maybe open once or twice. He was kind of.
Yeah, were you, I was just looking up Dante. So this was the year, 69.2 completion percentage, 4,717 yards, 39 touchdowns, 110.9 passer rating, 406 rushing yards. He was the offensive player of the year. If they would have had a better team, he would have been the MVP. And that was 2004. You could still allowed to play defense somewhat. You could still hit people.
That was when things were changing, though, because wasn't that the first
It
year?
was, but it wasn't. You didn't see those numbers back then.
No.
It was eye-popping.
Guys like him, Kurt Warner, Peyton Manning, they were putting up numbers. You were just like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it was eye-popping at the time, and he came back and he said, the game has slowed down for me.
The game
And
slowed down. I don't think he was good since.
No, he showed up horribly. I think they were 0-4 to start the next season, and then he tore his everything.
Well, they traded Moss after that 04 season, right?
I
thought they traded Moss to Oakland, and
they did trade him to.
They got Troy Williamson back or something, or they drafted.
No, They drafted Troy Williamson. Oh, that's a great story. Remind me to tell that story.
Who was the coach in 05? It wasn't. Was it still Mike Tice?
All the years run. I think it was, but they all run together for me. Danny was there from 92 to. Yeah, it had to be Mike.
You know what's on this week, John? Speaking of Denny Green, the Bears-Cardinals game.
Yeah, if you want to crown them. We know what they are.
My dorm room, me and a couple of my buddies watched that on Monday Night Football. It was freshman year at Penn State, and we just couldn't believe. Like, with Devin Hester returned the kick, we're like, Bears are going to do this, aren't they? Like, they don't deserve to be even in this game, and they're going to find some way to win. And
yeah. By the way, Denny Green would be in the Hall of Fame. I always say the Vikings, the 98 Vikings team.
That was the best team in football.
Was the best team I ever covered until the Super Bowl 57 Eagles team, which I thought was the best team I've ever covered. But they had the first perfect season from a
Gary
kicker in
Anderson.
NFL history who missed a easy
37-yarder in overtime.
Yeah, a bad snap from the Pro Bowl long snapper who never had a bad snap. A lot of things went wrong, and they didn't win the Super
The
Bowl.
Vikings had a 10-point lead in that game, didn't they? In the
Yeah.
second half?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Randall didn't have a good game. Randall was the MVP that year. Randall Cunningham did not have a good game. A bunch of stuff left on the field. They should have won the game easily. And, you know, he kind of spawned Brian Billick, who won a Super Bowl, and Tony Dungy, who obviously won a Super Bowl and is in the Hall of Fame. Denny is a Hall of Fame coach, but he probably – and he's one of the first African-American meaningful coaches. And he should be in the Hall of Fame. If he would have won that Super Bowl, he would be in the Hall of Fame, but he'll never get there. It's kind of a shame.
Great career in Minnesota too. It's funny you mentioned that, John, because Robert Smith, I talked to a couple times. I'd love to ask him about what happened in that championship game. I've talked to him about that.
Yeah,
I talked to him about that season, but I don't bring that up.
You're gonna bring. He was the second. I can't remember the first. Who was the first African American head coach? He was
it Art
second.
Shell?
Maybe, yeah.
I thought the Raiders hired Art Shell. I thought he was the first.
Yeah, and he might have been interim at the time, and then got the job, I believe.
Yeah, because didn't he get from Shanahan?
Yeah, so I think he was the first full-time hired to be the full-time head coach. Anyway, should be in the Hall of Fame.
I got to reach out to, after what happened this week, I got to reach out to Barry Sanders, too. I've talked to him a couple times.
Scary situation with Barry Sanders. All right, you can tell it's the off season. We're on to 67 tangents, but that's what I love about Jeff. He's willing to go with it.
Not 90s football, John. Just give me a 90s football game. I probably remember something of it.
It's a wheelhouse, and we love it when you step by. Now you're going to get back to the Legos right now.
Yeah, I got to figure out how to finish Groot. I got like 4 of them, like just waiting downstairs to do. I'm not doing them all today, but this is
Jeff, I'd love to help you. I'd love to give you some advice. I'd love to give you some of my expertise, but I cannot do that. I am sorry.
No,
this is
no expertise there.
This is my Jeff Kerr does nothing.
All right. Well, you did something, so you can say you were productive today.
I was productive today, and I'll go run today, and I'll say I was productive. But it's nice not having anything to write, anything to worry about. Maybe I'll transcribe the Nick Sirianni. Maybe I'll do something.
Jeff, how many miles you running there? Are you a big runner?
I run 10 a day.
Wow.
10
so
a day.
You are a good runner. I have some runners in my family. I am not a runner, but tough on
the most impressive calves at the Eagles camp will be Jalen Hurts or Saquon Barkley or vice versa, and then Jeff Kerr.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, Saquon Barkley puts my calves to shame. I know.
Yeah, well, Saquon puts everybody to shame.
I'll just say this, though. I run so I can eat whatever I want.
Saquon, as they call
Makes sense, Jeff. That makes sense. Thanks for joining, Jeff. We appreciate you staying on so long, man. Have a great week off. Enjoy your Lego sets and your cheesesteaks and your running. We'll talk to you next week. All right, man?
Cheesesteaks. Yeah, I'll probably do that at some point today, too.
Or you can get away with it after those 10 miles. Look at it that way. Yeah.
Thanks,
See you,
Jeff.
guys.
See you, bud.
There's Jeff Kerr joining us on Birds 365. I'm dubbing that the tangent segment with Johnny Mack and Jeff.
Yeah,
Kerr.
well, it's the off season.
That was some good stuff. I love listening. You guys are some good sports historians, I guess I could call. You guys know a lot about the game. I mean, Stephen Buren, I know he was great, but I'm born in 98. He played in like 48. That's 50 years before I was even born. Admittedly, I have not gone down the 40s football rabbit hole yet. Maybe I should. Maybe I will one day when I have a week like Jeff Kerr does and I can dive into it. But
we should get on Ray Diddy to talk about Steve Van Buren. Well, the way I try to do it is because, when you're judging people, you should only judge people amongst their peers.
Yeah, it's tough to compare different eras, right? I mean, how do you do it? It's like
No, well, you
I love
can't.
hockey. I'm a big hockey guy. I watch a lot of hockey. I grew up playing hockey. Even right now, Connor McDavid, who's the star of the Oilers, if you're not familiar with hockey, everybody is comparing him to Wayne Gretzky right now because he's a goal scorer, he's a point machine. Yeah, I'm just like it's completely different games. Watching Connor McDavid play now and watching Wayne Gretzky play when he played is completely different. It's so hard to compare the two, and what they were able to accomplish in their given time. Now, I think modern players are better because I think we've developed and I think we're, more talented now. Maybe that's just in my
They're
opinion,
more
but
physically gifted.
more physically gifted, right? That's the better way.
And part of that is that's one of my which I try to explain to people. Like if you're going to play the time machine game, as I like to call it, it's got to work both ways. In other words, I'm not much of a hockey guy, but to use your description, sort of like Wayne Gretzky's LeBron and probably the Michael Jordan of hockey. You have to put Connor McDavid back in his era if you want to match up Wayne Gretzky and say, well, he's a better athlete. He's better. They have better travel. They have 67 coaches just on strength and conditioning. They make money where they can have their own personal.
There's so much context.
There's so much, and you put him back in his era, and he's got the same hurdles that Wayne Gretzky has, and you see, all right, well, Wayne Gretzky, how many, I don't even know. How many MVPs did Wayne Gretzky win? I don't know. I'm not a hockey guy, but I know Connor McDavid ain't at his level. I do know that. I don't know. How many 200-point seasons does he have? I don't know. I'm just not at Wayne Gretzky.
Wayne Gretzky was insane, but there's also a line of logic that he was, scoring on goalies that had half a face mask and tiny little pads, and it was just a different era. That's why. I mean, I'm not taking away from Wayne Gretzky. I think Wayne Gretzky is the greatest hockey player of all time.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You judge him against his peers. Against his peers in that era, he was so by far the best. Like, you got to get to a really is Connor McDavid is he so by far the best?
In his era? No. He's not. He's not. Saying. The gap between Gretzky and his peers versus McDavid and his is nowhere near as big for Connor as it was for Wayne.
If you're asking me, that Gretzky's better. And I've argued, because I got to cover LeBron James. I've argued, and people hate this, that LeBron James is the most well-rounded basketball player who's ever lived. And that means he's better than Michael Jordan, and people lose their mind. Is he better than Michael? I don't even know if Michael Jordan's better than Wilt Chamberlain. Is he better than Michael Jordan? I don't know. Basketball is more my wheelhouse, so I go back to that. I will say Wilt was more dominant in his era, and there are people that push back on that because they'll say, well, he's playing a bunch of guys. Like, again, the time machine's got to work both ways, man. If you have Wilt Chamberlain's genetics and he was born in 2024, he's got those same genetics, and then he's got all the stuff that you give to the modern player. All the stuff with the nutrition and, he's probably out doing other things anyway with the women at that. But my point is the time machine has to work both ways. And if you want to say Joel Embiid is better than Wilt Chamberlain, which is fucking laughable. If you want to say that because he's more skilled, because the game has changed, by the way, I'll agree with that. You got to put that clown back in the 60s with all the stuff Wilt had to go through and the travel, and you don't have first class. Are you kidding me? Time machine's got to work both ways.
So you are not willing to make a pick on Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
Well, I think Wilt's better than both.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, but between the two, I would lean LeBron James.
Wow. That's not what I was expecting from you, Johnny Mac.
No, well, LeBron is the best basketball player I've ever seen by a wide margin.
I think LeBron is the most talented athletically, but I don't know, man. Michael Jordan.
I don't even think he's the most talented athletically. There's so many great athletes in the NBA. He does everything, man. He can play 5 positions. He can rebound. He can pass. He can do everything.
I'm a
Great
Jordan.
defender.
I'm a Jordan guy, Johnny Mac. If I'm gonna,
Everybody's a Jordan guy. I get it. I mean, Jordan's splashier because he was more of the closer. You know, he's great. Don't get me wrong. I think, one of the greatest things about Michael Jordan is that people think Scottie Pippen's one of the best 50 players of all time. I've never gotten more hate mail when he made that list, and I said that's an absolute joke. Good role player. Michael Jordan elevated him to that level that people think of him like that. So Michael Jordan is one of the best players of all time. This is all parsing. Whether it's Wilt or they're all great. And Michael's on that. Larry Bird's one of the greatest players of all time.
It's tough to compare. I agree. But what do you make of the common knock on LeBron? Because I'm a big LeBron guy too. I have no, I'm not like one of the people that's like Jordan and I hate LeBron. I think LeBron is right there with him. Maybe, as close as you can get. But what do you say about all the finals losses? That's what I don't like. Like when you're that great and your basketball is a game of 5 on the floor and stars elevate and you're in the finals and you lose however many finals he's lost now. I think that's a fair.
No, I think the consistency of getting there, how many times in a row,
right, is an accolade for sure.
I don't. Giannis talked about this. I don't know, maybe last year or the year before when Milwaukee it was the year Milwaukee got knocked out after winning, and somebody called it a failure, and he had this thing that went viral, and he said, from an athlete, and athletes look at these things, and I see it all the time with football players as well. Like they look at it differently, and you always hear them because you're going to fail more than you succeed. I mean, Michael Jordan won 6 championships, I think was the number.
Yeah, 6.
He finished with. How many seasons he play?
Less than a lot. I think less than LeBron. I think he played like 14 or 15 years.
Yeah, I think it was 15. But the point is, he lost his last game more than he won it. Unless you're Bill Russell or Yogi Berra.
Yeah.
Most people are in that category. You lose your last game more than you win it because it's really difficult to win. Tom Brady, he won 7. How many did he lose? He lost his last
Larry
game.
Bird.
Larry had what, 3 or 4?
Yeah, but I mean, like on your just in the John McMullen thought process of where you.
Oh, he's top 10 easy, maybe top 5. I'd have to go through it. Yeah, he was great.
Kobe a top 10 to you?
Yes. Kobe was.
What other modern players are on the brink of that for you? Not many right now after LeBron, right?
Well, I consider Kobe a modern player.
Yeah. I more mean like, is there anybody that's potentially still playing the game or that is, playing now that could reach that level? I guess it's too early to tell, and we'll see how their careers pan out. But I don't see anybody with the type of talent that even LeBron has. He's a guy that's still in the league.
Yeah, well, there's always somebody who'll come up. Like I thought Anthony Edwards was going to break through. I was wrong on that. And then he
Well, he's
played
still
kind of
young,
poorly.
isn't he? He's still
I
like
mean, there's so many
23,
good.
isn't
Luke is so skilled. I mean, there's so many tremendously. Embiid is tremendously skilled.
he? Yeah,
You
but come
know,
on, you're not putting Embiid in a
no,
top.
I'm
Yeah,
not. That's the
no,
point.
I'm
Jason
not.
Tatum is a great player. How
Steph
you know
Curry,
does
Mark Borneman brings up Steph Curry. Duh, that's a big one.
yeah Steph's already
I
top
think
50.
Steph is iconic because I truly believe he
Well,
changed
Steph
the way
changed the
basketball
game.
was
Yeah,
played.
I
Yeah,
say
he
it all the
changed the
time.
way
Yeah,
the game was played, which in its
yeah.
own right,
Giannis as well. I just brought up Giannis. Is
yeah.
you know I'd like to see him get better at free throws, but um, Shaq was terrible at free throws, and so was Wilt for the most part.
You got to give Edwards time too, Johnny Mac. He's only 22.
No,
Crowder.
yeah, you got to
Yeah,
give guys time.
yeah,
But Steph's already there. Steph's easy top 50. He's probably top 20 at this point.
yeah.
Um, when you talk about because the NBA always does their top 50.
Come on, Slager. Slager says Curry didn't change the game. The effing 3-point line changed the game. Well, the 3-point line was around before Steph Curry. He's the one who made it so efficient and effective that game plans changed to shooting 3-pointers more because they were willing to live and die by it. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
think
I always talk about Steph Curry as Steph is the I always say like youth basketball coaches must hate Steph Curry,
they
right?
definitely do. The kids
Because
just walk
everybody
out and
wants
start
to,
hurling
yeah,
3-pointers from half
exactly.
court. Yeah.
And I always laugh about that. But yeah, the NBA 3-point line has been around for a very long time now. And he kind of shifted. Now, I don't think it was him. It was more of the nerds, to be honest, that said, "Hey, you know what? If you make 4 out of 10
Yeah.
3-pointers, that's 12 points. That means you got to shoot 60% from inside the 3 to get 12 points. We're more likely, same thing as baseball, they overtook it. That's where all the 3-point shots come from, just the averages of it. But
Well, yeah, and I also think like any conversation, there's a lot of context. Is my internet good, Johnny Mac? Can you hear me? I'm getting
yeah.
there's a lot of context, obviously, that goes into it. And you could take a guy like, let me just pick Kyle Korver, right? A 3-point specialist. He didn't change the game. Like Steph had so much context about him. He made it fun. He made it look incredible. He did it at a high clip. He won games with it. I'll never forget the game in the playoffs. Who were they playing that year? I think it was the Thunder. And he's, at the end of the game, and he walks up past half court and just drains it through. I mean, that game was – he did it in a way that actually changed the game of basketball. Many people have been great. Ray Allen, many people have been great at shooting the 3-pointer. Steph Curry did it in a way that –
No, I'm with you. Steph
Yeah,
is
I mean-
above and beyond. But and a lot of it does, whatever they won, 4 titles, whatever they are. But a lot of it
4, right? They won 4, yeah.
a lot of it deals with success, but he's better. I never thought anybody be a better shooter than his dad, to be honest. His dad was an unbelievable shooter. And back in the days, it was, Larry Bird was a tremendous shooter. Del Curry, Craig Hodges, for people that remember Craig Hodges, I would say, man, those guys are just unbelievable. And then Steph Curry came along, and it was like 35-footer is, again, you would be murdered by any coach in basketball history for taking a 30-foot shot, and he made it look easy. He was the king of the no, yes shot as a basketball coach.
I'm going to speculate that our buddy in the chat, Flagger57, is a coach of a youth basketball team right now. He says the 3-pointer ruined the game. No fast break, no low post, no movement. It's all out.
I agree with all of that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, right.
And the game is, to me, I say it all the time. I grew up a Sixers fan. The most exciting moments at basketball were Mo Cheeks leading the break and dishing to Julius Erving or Bobby
Right.
Jones, and then finishing. Just thunderous dunks. The place would come unglued in big games. And now, if you have a point guard leading the break, everybody veers to the three-point line. It's boring. I agree with Slager 100%. The game itself is less aesthetic. It's not fun to watch like it was. But that's the game. That's what they play. So who does it best? And Steph Curry is in that conversation. But I agree with
Tony. Mark Borman brings up. My father wasn't a massive Andrew Toney fan. He loved Andrew Toney.
Andrew was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, his career cut short by foot injuries. That the Celtics and the Sixers, for those who don't know, had the greatest rivalry in sports, and I mean in sports, for a long period of time. The Julius Erving Sixers and the Larry Bird Celtics. They were on the cover of Sports Illustrated when that was a big deal. As the greatest rivalry in sports. At one point, it was this absurd number. It was like 32-32, dead even. That you had that competition going back and forth. Just great players on both sides. But the Sixers started to inch ahead when they got Andrew Toney, and Andrew Toney developed. And his nickname was the Boston Strangler. He would kill the Celtics, kill them. And the Celtics went out and got Dennis Johnson just to stop or slow down Andrew Toney. One of the great forgotten players in Philadelphia sports history is Andrew Toney, because it was a short span because of the injuries. But at the height of his game, man, he was something else. He was tremendous shooter.
Fun little basketball rabbit hole we just got into, Johnny Mac. I know you love basketball and you've been following it for a long time, and you obviously are very knowledgeable on it. So pretty good stuff there. Pretty cool. This is the Tangent Show now officially. After you and Jeff
the off season
tangents. Now Johnny Mac and I are going on tangents. Yeah, we'll do some more fun tangents through the off season. We got about 30 days until the Eagles report to camp, where we'll be really ramped up. So we will enjoy some tangents in the next couple of days. Let's take our final commercial break. If you're in the chat room, make sure you guys drop a like on the show today. A lot of good conversation, a lot of good commentary, and a lot of great chats from our people. So we appreciate all of you guys being here. Drop a like on the show. Stay tuned. We'll come back and put a wrap on this Monday edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Monday edition of Birds 365. Good show today. Thanks to Jeff Kerr for spending some extended time with us. Earlier, I thought he was good, so we talked about some Eagles offense early in the show today. So if you missed that segment, go back and watch it. Johnny Mac, what I want to do for the last 10 minutes here. Last week, we ran through, at the end of the week, we ran through the first 8 Eagles opponents. We did 4 on one day, 4 in the next. We only have 10 minutes here, so let's do the next 2. Eagles Cowboys and Eagles Commanders are back-to-back, November 10th, November 14th. Start with the Cowboys. How do you view the Cowboys coming into this year?
Good team, still a good team. Question a lot about what they were doing this offseason. They obviously, I think, from a standpoint of on paper, took a little bit of a step back. I think that's fair to say. But, I mean, they still have Dak Prescott. They still have CD Lamb. They still have Zach Martin. They still have a very good roster as a whole. Your question is, when you start to talk about some of the contracts and guys being on contract years, you typically don't want your starting quarterback to be on a contract year. You typically don't want a player like CD Lamb on his contract year. You typically don't want – you want to get Micah Parsons done a little bit early. So the way they do business is strange to me, but they also draft well. They've been one of the best drafting teams in the NFL over the years, and they've been able to restock the cupboard from a talent standpoint. I don't like the way it's shaping up for Dallas this season, though, because I do think contracts weigh on players, and
Especially 3 stars like that, man.
Yeah. And they're going to want
– difference is crazy. I mean, we talk about Milton Williams didn't get his new contract. The Cowboys are talking about their 3 best players.
Yeah, and when you saw it last year a little bit with Hassan Reddick, when you don't have the contract you want, then you start maybe doing some things you wouldn't do if you have the contract you want, if that makes sense. So,
yeah, it makes complete sense.
Dak Prescott wants to have a big year statistically. CD Lamb wants to have a big year statistically. They're always going to naturally, but you try to push for something maybe. Is Micah Parsons freelancing a little bit more to get that sack total up? I don't know, but these are the types of things that can happen when you have players, fighting for their next contracts. I don't like the way they do business, the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's really odd the way they do business. You think it's another split coming, though? 2 games versus the Cowboys this year?
Yeah, definitely. They're still a talented team. The Eagles have really struggled down there. And I expect it to be a home and home split again for the Eagles and Cowboys.
Yeah, so we'll see how that game plays out. And then the next game is the Commanders, Eagles Commanders in Philly. That game is on, I think is that a Thursday night game, November 14th? I think that might be.
I don't have the schedule. I believe the Redskins, the Commanders are.
Yeah, that's a Thursday night game, November 14th. So that'll be a Thursday night game in Philly versus the Commanders. How do you view the Commanders?
Well, better. I think Adam Peters is going to be a good GM. I think Josh Harris is a good NBA owner, and maybe he won't even be a good NFL owner, but I know he'll be a better owner than Daniel Snyder. I know that. Um, so they're getting better from that standpoint. A lot of it will depend on Jaden Daniels and how quickly he assimilates to the NFL game. I'm a big Jaden Daniels guy. I think he's the best quarterback in this draft, even better than Caleb Williams. I think he's going to be a really good player. Does that mean it's going to happen from week one? I don't think so. So there's going to be some growing pains. And Marcus Mariota is the backup, so you don't want him playing. So he's going to have to play right away. And you might as well take advantage of it while you can early if he develops. And they still have some talent on defense. I would argue, their defensive tackles are the best in the division still. Jonathan Allen, Dewan Payne. Their linebackers are the best in the division with Bobby Wagner and Frankie Luvu, and they're both new. It would be interesting to see if the Eagles brought some of that mentality to the linebacker position. Emmanuel Forbes Jr. really struggled against A.J. Brown as a rookie.
Yeah, I wonder why. The guy is
Maybe that helps. Maybe that helps. He's got talent. I've always been a Benjamin St. Juste guy. He's really long, big corner. So they have some talent in the secondary as well. But I still think they're a year away. It may be a year away from being a year away. But I think they're finally headed in the right direction. So that's a positive for the Commanders.
Yeah, you think the NFC East has a better chance to be a dominant division in the next 3 to 5 years, let's say, or back to the NFC least?
I don't think they're going to be the NFC least. And I don't, because the Cowboys and Eagles have been good. It's been two teams. The Giants are a disaster, continue to be a disaster, and the Commanders are finally coming out of it. I mean, those two organizations were in the bottom five. We got off onto that tangent. Who's the worst organization? Those two organizations were firmly entrenched in the bottom five for years. I think the Commanders are coming out of that. I thought the Giants were coming out of it with Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. I could be wrong. I mean,
I thought they were too, especially after that first year. I mean, I think everybody thought they were. He won Coach of the Year for crying out loud.
Yeah, and I think he's fighting with assistants, firing it, moving on. I mean, it doesn't look good right now, but for Washington, it's looking more positive, I would say.
Yeah, should be good. I mean, I got to say, I like the quarterback they picked up. James Jones is in our chat, our resident Commander guy. He knows I like Jaden Daniels. I think he's going to be good. And then I also heard, his coach in college before he transferred to LSU was Herm Edwards. We had him on the National Football Show, and he just, I guess maybe you could say he's biased, but boy, did he speak highly of him. He thinks he is going to be a major success in the NFL. So we'll see how Jaden Daniels looks. And how the Cowboys look. I think they're going to be. I think the tough part about the Cowboys for me is, I think they've taken a step back, but they still have so many good players. Be
careful on assuming the Cowboys are going to be terrible.
I mean, they got some players. I mean, they still have CeeDee Lamb. Like they got some players still in Dallas where, even if they take a step back, they're still going to be a formidable team.
Yeah. And they turn it over better than anybody. And now, Trayvon Diggs is going to be back to team with Deron Bland. And they got, Donovan Wilson's a good safety. Hooker's a good safety if he's healthy. They still have Micah, who's a big deal, despite Eagles fans claiming He isn't. Demarcus Lawrence is still a very good player. Mozzie Smith has got to get better. They're not good against the run. And they have crappy linebackers as well. Eric Kendricks was a good player like 4 or 5 years ago. But life moves fast in the NFL. So, they have crappy linebackers. Eagles have crappy linebackers. So that'll sort of X each other out, I guess. But boy, they can turn it over inconsistently. Maybe that changes because Dan Quinn isn't there anymore. But Mike Zimmer has a history of good defenses, especially early when he gets to places. Or if you look at his career in Cincinnati, great defense early, then people stop listening to him. Great defense in Minnesota, then people stop listening to him. So you probably have like a 2-year span before people get sick of him. History says he'll be pretty good.
Yep, we'll see how it all plays out. Johnny Mac, good Monday edition of the show today. A lot of tangents, a lot of topics, a lot of sports, a lot of players, all sorts of things on today's edition of Birds 365. Good stuff from you.
Well, I hope people are enjoying the off season. A little bit of a more relaxed format. You can talk about different things, and sometimes that's good.
Yeah, definitely. We'll do a little bit more of that. I also want to do a little bit, we mentioned at the top of the show, we have about a month until they report to training camp. So I would like to do some Q&A, a little bit of Q&A, as long as everybody gives good comments in the chat and there's no trolling or anything. I mean, we can have a great segment. You guys really bring some good comments. A lot of you, I do say, because I look around on YouTube and I watch a lot of other YouTube channels, a lot of people that talk on the Eagles. Our viewers are great. We have some good viewers. We have people that have real good opinions, have real good thought processes, and understand the game. So if you guys have some questions for Johnny Mac that you're thinking about, definitely keep them in the queue and bring them ready on Birds 365. And one of the days we don't have 2 guests and, we have an hour to play, we'll do that. So we appreciate all you guys being here. Johnny Mac, good show today. Make sure you guys hit the like button on your way out. Good show, Johnny Mac. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, man?
All right. Stay cool, everybody.
Stay cool. See you tomorrow on Birds 365. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.